night at 7 Eastern Time. Joining me, as always, is Steve Murphy, the director of the Storage Syndicate. We are so fortunate tonight to be joined by two rock stars in the real estate world. If you are in any type of circles in real estate at all, you have been exposed to Jennifer and Jeremy Perkins. Got a chance to meet them in person back in Puerto Rico a little over a month ago. Was so fortunate. We had been friends on Facebook and social media circles for a while. Really love their vibe and what they put out there, not only from a knowledge aspect of real estate, but just their positivity and the mindset piece that goes with it. And they agreed to come on to the Storage Syndicate Spotlight. Was so grateful to them for joining us. So, guys, first and foremost, just want to say thank you so much for coming and joining us. And I'm going to let Murph take over for the beginning.
Awesome. Yeah, again, Jennifer and Jeremy, appreciate you guys hopping on. I kind of like to take things all the way back to the beginning, where your story began in real estate and what that looked like. Were you both involved together, or was it a one-person deal and then the other one jumped on, and how'd that look? What that structure look like?
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Well, Jeremy started before me, so why don't you tell a little bit about your story before we started working together, and I'll go from there.
Well, I basically started in real estate, I would say technically, just right out of high school, doing framing houses, getting into construction, things like that. I bought a townhome in 2005 or 6. And just kind of lived in it, worked on it for about 6 months, 7 months, maybe up to a year, and sold it for a profit. And so that was kind of my first dip into making money in real estate. And so then I bought another house after that, like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, 2007, 2008, around that area, around that time frame. Was going to fix it up, do the same thing, live in it, sell it, and then ended up getting stuck in it with the 2008 crash. I had all the worst loans you could get, the Fannie Mae loans with the balloons every so often. So I kind of fought tooth and nail through that by living in it, renting rooms out, things like that. Then eventually getting some modifications to the loan. And we actually still own the house today, and it's been a good rental over the years. And so that was my first bad experience in real estate. So I had a good experience, and then immediately I had a bad experience. Mm-hmm. And then just kind of worked through the trades for a long time, and ended up getting a general construction license in 2010. And then did a lot of work for other investors, building houses and flipping houses and things like that, up until about 2014, 2015. And then shortly after that, I think, maybe up to 2017 or 18, we started Rubix.
2018.
2018, up until that time. Jennifer and I decided to start Rubix, and we started building houses and selling houses and flipping houses and doing things like that for ourselves. And then at the same time, we also started our first self-storage facility with Synergy Storage. So that was just kind of overview of start to where we're at currently in a nutshell.
I love it so much because a lot of times we see, so especially in the social media age, we see people in real estate put forth this image of like, man, I'm just crushing the world. And the reality is that anyone that makes it to a level, especially where you guys are at, where you're just out there, you have a bunch of people that follow your story, they pay attention to what you're doing, you run in circles with some really, highly successful people like yourselves. It was not easy to get to that place. There were some serious pain points along that journey. Talk about that a little bit. What makes you keep striving when you're in that position in 08, 09, 10, when you're dealing with these balloon payments and having a struggle?
Well, I mean, at some point, there's really no choice, because at one point I told the bank, just come get the house. So I don't give a leave the keys on the counter. I'm done. And they just wouldn't get the house. So I had to do something. So then I started just, talking with different people, and they're like, hey, you need to look into a modification. or these loans are actually somewhat illegal. There's conversations about, maybe that you could get out of your bad situation. And so the more I did research, the more I figured out that it wasn't as bad as I had really thought in my mind. It really actually wasn't even that bad a situation at all. And then at the end of the day, looking back, it was an incredible situation because the loan was zero down. I had no money into the house. By the time I did the modification, I didn't even pay the house note for 18 months straight when I told the bank to come take the house back. So essentially I had a free loan or whatever to spend however I wanted to over those 18 months. And so it really got my mind thinking once I got to the other side of that transaction of, looking at all the bright sides of what had happened. And I thought, man, if I can just apply this to situations that actually make sense, that actually have underwriting or that are, thought about or constructed in a way that it's a win-win, then I don't see how you can lose in real estate, because I was in the worst case scenario by paying at the top of the market, the retail price for a house at the top of the market with the absolute worst loan you could possibly get, and still sitting in six figures of equity right now today in the house. It's cash flowing, $600 or $700 a month. So if that's a worst case scenario, I thought, well, shit, I don't think you can lose in this game. So, it's hard to even get upset about bad situations. So I think that was just a blessing in disguise from the beginning.
I love the way that you took that and just, I always talk about like taking a 180-degree perspective shift, right? Because you're in it, and we've all been there. Like, you're in this situation where there's a payment due. And we're human, right? The bill comes and you feel like, shit, I got to pay this bill. And it's a ton of pressure. Yep. But you're able to really swing around to the other side of that and just look at it from a different perspective. How important has that been in you two being able to get to this place where you've been able to see things from a different angle than I think most people would see it from? Like, many people are not able to make that perspective shift.
Yeah, I think for us, like when we look at a deal, we're always looking at, are there multiple exit strategies? Because there's a great chance that, some of the strategies are not going to end up working, or you're going to lose money a certain way. There's so many unforeseens, like flipping houses. Jeremy said you can't lose. Well, you can lose, and a lot of people lose, especially in the beginning, but there's a lot of other strategies and where you can make it a win situation. You just gotta factor in multiple exits. Like if you're flipping a house, can you rent it? Can you short-term rent it? Can you sell it? Can you wholesale it? Same thing with storage. There's multiple exit strategies, especially on a development deal that you're entitling.
Love it. So tell me, you guys, what led you to storage? You're obviously, Jeremy's coming from the trades. You're having some success in the residential market with building houses and rehabbing houses. What was it about storage that attracted you to it?
We just got lucky, to tell you the truth. So my background is, while Jeremy's out learning and doing construction stuff, I lived in Germany for 6 years working for the military. And during that time, and I wasn't much of a reader, I planned to go to school for business and be a CEO of a company, working for somebody else one day, work my way up the corporate ladder. And then one day I went to the bookstore and got a book because I had a long flight from Germany back to the US. And it was called Why We Want You to Be Rich. It was a bestseller at the time by Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki. And I didn't know who Robert Kiyosaki was, but I did know who Donald Trump was. And I was like, rich guys want me to be rich? Like, that doesn't make sense, because if I had, the more money for me means less money for them. Like, that was my perspective back then, and a lot of people's perspective still. And so I bought this book and I could not put it down the whole trip. And so after I read that book, it had a list of Kiyosaki's books, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Read all those books, read a bunch of other books that were recommended. And I was just on this journey of studying real estate investing. And I couldn't really do it while I lived in Germany, but I wanted to do it one day whenever I came back to the US. And so it was about 10 years of that dream before Jeremy and I ever did our first flip together. And we even had, when we first got together, we tried to open up a pool company that failed. So it's not like everything that we touch turns to gold. We tried different things that didn't work out. And how we got to storage was there was this property, and it just seemed like it had so much potential. It was a house and 8 acres, and the house was like big time fixer upper, and it had road frontage on a busy highway. And it used to be a farm, but it was all run down as a farm, wouldn't work as a farm. And my dad was friends with the seller, and the seller wanted to move to Florida and had a for sale by owner sign in the yard. And we thought, man, that just seems like it has so much commercial potential. And so asked around, the people of the town, like, what do you think would go good here? The, real estate brokers that knew stuff about the area. And they're like, I would put storage there. I would put storage there. And I was like, yeah, I don't know anything about storage, but we'll look into it. Like if they said, I would put a grocery store there, I would put a grocery store there, we would be on, well, I don't know if they do that, stores, but we'd be running a grocery store right now.
That's great.
And so just after doing the research, we took it through zoning, which was difficult. It definitely was difficult. And this ended up being, it was such an amazing deal. At the time, I didn't have any money or any credit. And the house that we were living in didn't make much on it, but, did a house hack, fixer up or sold it, had $10,000, netted $10,000, and the seller took that as a down payment to seller finance it for 1 year. Had 1 year to get the credit situation fixed and get a bank loan on it. All right. And he tried to back out on closing day, literally had to go pick the guy up and take him to closing and let the title attorney convince him, like, we've got this backed, we've got this structured in a way to protect your interest. Right. And purchased it, seller financing, and within a year had it entitled, cash out refied it, got enough money from that refi to buy a feasibility study, got an SBA 7A loan, and did the development of the first big loan, $1 million loan.
That's awesome.
Other than that, I think we had borrowed just for our personal homes and maybe one. I don't even know if we had borrowed hard money to flip a house at the time. I could not believe somebody let us use $1 million and use that money to build that storage facility, stabilized it, and then we're just finishing up an expansion where we're adding another 300 units.
I think it's so interesting because many people don't understand the major difference between residential real estate and commercial real estate, right? Where when you're going to get loans in residential real estate, they're giving you a loan based on the perceived value of the property based on the market, right? What are people paying for houses around the area? Where when you make this jump into commercial real estate and you talked about getting a feasibility study, you go to get a professional who ostensibly understands the market. They care about cash flow, right? And so here you are, you guys had $10,000 to your name before you enter into buy this property, and a bank's willing to give you $1 million. But the reality is they weren't giving the $1 million to Jennifer and Jeremy Perkins. They're giving the $1 million to this property that clearly has a pro forma that's going to support that kind of a loan. What a different reality to get involved in. How much of a culture shock was that to all of a sudden be like, hey,
I still get chills talking about it. And like when I've spoken on like at real estate events and I tell this story, there's so many people that like just haven't like found a good deal yet or haven't gotten, that boost that they need to get out of their W-2. And they're like, no, there's no way, that wouldn't work for me. And I'm like, I'm not kidding. I didn't have good credit at the time, had no experience. I'd literally been reading books from Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki about real estate for 10 years. And I had been studying, but I didn't have a dad to lead me through it, a mentor, nothing like that, And so really, if you're really serious about it, like you can find a way.
I love that idea of just taking action, right? Like you guys went and did it. And despite, as you said, some serious setbacks. Mm-hmm. Wanted to go down a road with you guys. I met you guys in Puerto Rico at the Legacy Family, Tim Bratz's mastermind. You kind of alluded to this in this journey. It hasn't been just Jennifer and Jeremy along the way, not just books, but you guys leaned on other people in these different situations and have surrounded yourself with people that are also taking the same types of actions as you and relied on their intelligence and their support for your own growth. How important has that been to put yourself in those types of situations and rooms?
Jeremy, you want that one or me?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I guess it was 2020 was the first year that we ever joined a mastermind. And Jennifer was kind of nudging me and saying, we need to go to this thing and, look into it. It's going to help us grow. And I'm like, I don't want to be sold something and mess with free stuff. It's just a marketing scheme and all that. It just didn't really believe in it. But we ended up joining a mastermind that year. And it's definitely been a game changer and has increased our growth substantially. I don't know how to even measure the growth just in the last couple of years, 2 to 3 years. But I mean, without it, we would be nowhere where we are today, because you don't know what you don't know. And when you're around people that have done things that you haven't done, or maybe have a different perspective on things you are doing, just that whole mastermind concept is very true, because now you're thinking about things so many different ways because you've had those conversations with so many different perspectives, that I wish it's something that I would have done 20 years ago. In 2006, I probably would have just avoided a lot of those headaches and grew a lot faster. But,
as you said, you don't know what you don't know, but thankfully we're able to have that nudge and get into that room. I heard someone say it. We had an event in New Orleans with the most recent SSA, and the way they phrased it was, you just can't explain it, right? Like, you can't tell somebody, like, we can sit here and talk about it as the group of us that have all been at various mastermind events, but you can't explain to somebody else what happens in those situations until they're in those situations, right? And quite frankly, as you guys know, there's some people that go into that room and don't have the pickup from it that people like ourselves do. But for those of us that go in and feel it, man, it's a life-altering thing.
Yeah, I would add that being in a mastermind raises the ceiling, and being in the right mastermind, because I've been in groups where we were the ceiling, where people were like, Jeremy and Jennifer, be more like Jeremy and Jennifer. And that's great for when you're helping other people. But whenever you're needing help, you want to be in the right mastermind that can raise that ceiling and be surrounded by people that are already doing what you want to be doing. And like, I just I'm involved with specific couples that are significantly more successful than us, and they have small children, and they have all this stuff going on, and people think, oh, well, I can't do that because my kids are little right now, and I've got this going on and that going on. I'm around people that are doing loads and loads, way more than us, and it makes me realize, like, that means I can do more. I'm not overwhelmed. I just haven't made my system sufficient yet.
Yeah, Jennifer, you actually just kind of opened up to my favorite topic here. So, and Jeremy, you kind of alluded to it. If Jennifer was the one that pushed you into, venturing into that mastermind, right? How important is it? Go with the title of this presentation, or this, Spotlight Power Couple. How important and how much value is it that you guys get to lean on each other, that you're running this business together as a power couple, as having the house and having the family? What kind of value is that brought to you guys, to your success?
I mean, I believe that's the same. That's the definition of a mastermind in itself too, especially when it's with your spouse. You can't beat that, because a lot of conversations we have casually are still propelling us with our personal lives and also our business lives at the same time, because it's all blended. And so it's almost like a compound effect in itself, to be able to grow together. That, I don't know you can't really put a value on it, but it's definitely a time value for sure, because having to live 2 separate lives, if I had to live business and then family, it would be a lot more challenging for myself. And so it's been nice to really come together.
Yeah. And we both excel in different areas. Like, I said this before, and I think a lot of times, like, when there's the man in the business and he wants to get his wife involved, it's usually like the books that he's suggesting that she do. And just because, like, we are good with, organizing, things like that, and are capable of doing that, doesn't mean that the spouse should be doing the books. And so figuring out what each of us are good at, like for me, it's for underwriting a deal or looking at highest and best use of land. And I can do bookkeeping too if I need to, but we have dedicated bookkeepers to do that sort of thing. And Jeremy being out in the field and dealing with people, like if I'm out there dealing with people, we're not going to be very successful because that's just not what I excel at. I'm best behind a computer and he's best dealing with people. And so us figuring out what our highest and best use, our unique genius is, and utilizing that, and then outsourcing the things that neither of us either are good at or enjoy doing, that's really, really been great for us. And then if we have something like, I don't know, a project is getting sticky and we need to figure out another strategy on it, we can stay up late and work on it together at home while the kids are asleep or whatever, and grind through that problem. And then we can, chill on another day, during the day, whatever.
That opens up a thing that I thought was very cool. When we were down in Puerto Rico, you guys had your kids with you. And we talked offline a little bit that you guys made the decision last year that because you do travel so much, because you've made the masterminds part of your lifestyle, and even for real estate, there's that travel, you started to homeschool your kids and you've involved them in it. Tell me what led you to make that decision, and how has that been transformative for you guys?
Yeah. So this is our first year homeschooling, and we didn't have a problem with the school they were in. They did well there. They enjoyed it. The teachers were great and everything like that. So we didn't have like a bullying issue or anything like that led us to homeschooling. But at the end of the school year last year, it was during state testing, and we had a mastermind to go to, and I needed to take them with me because the family members that normally helped us, they were having health issues, and it was a big deal with the school. They're like, oh, you can't take them out during state testing. It's going to affect their grade, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I really need to, like, this is, I don't know what to do. And it was just a bad feeling, like to be chained to the school and the state testing because they need their numbers and reports or whatever. And so I thought, let me explore different options. So I started researching like micro schools and homeschooling and that sort of thing, and realized like it's so adaptable. And I realized too, like all these people that I'm in masterminds with homeschool their kids, and some of them do it, but some of them outsource it, and we're capable of doing either. So initially I started doing it on my own. First quarter was hard. And then I started developing systems and finding, what they really like. And it's been amazing. Like our kids have been employees ever since they were old enough to swing a leaf blower. And so they can get more hours in now that we're homeschooling. Good for me, good for them. And they can learn things that are more imperative to their future because they don't have plans to go to college. If they want to, they're more than welcome to. That's just not something that we necessarily encourage. I do have an MBA. So, we have both sides of it between me and Jeremy. And it's, employers, if you're going to be employed, don't assign the same value to a degree as they do a lot of other things. And my kids understand that YouTube University is free. If they want to learn something, the resources are there. They just need to go out there and figure it out.
I think it's so interesting. You made a post, it might have been today or yesterday, about your daughter wanted to do pet grooming. Mm-hmm. But too young to get paid. And so you said, well, I know a pet groomer, you can go and volunteer. And she's like, yeah, but I'm not going to get paid. And then your son made the point that she is getting paid. And I think this is so mind blowing for me. Like you, I have advanced degrees. And if I had to rewind and do it over again, I would have taken a very different route. When I was coming up, it was like, that was the path, right? You went to college because if you didn't go to college, you didn't get a good job.
Right.
As entrepreneurs now, and something I didn't learn till later in life, we understand that creating a job is way more fulfilling than going and getting a job. And so you guys kind of have laid that path down for your kids already. They mm-hmm. understand that I think what your son said was you're getting you're getting the experience, and that is being paid. And I thought that was so phenomenal at a young age.
Yeah. And one more thing to that is So my kids get an hourly, a fair and reasonable hourly wage per the IRS for the work that they do. And I do that, one, because it helps them get an income, two, because it helps the business and helps us. And also because I want them to know how bad it sucks to be an employee. So every time they have an employee complain, I'm like, yeah, well, maybe you should start your own business. You know, maybe you should do something about that. This is what it's like to work, to spend the majority of your life working for somebody else.
I love it. We had a question from Michael Perone when we were touching on, you guys doing residential real estate, and we kind of alluded to the differences in commercial real estate, asking the difference between traditional real estate, which I'm going to assume to mean residential, doing your typical wholesaling or fix and flip, versus land development and self-storage. Jen, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So I'm a real estate agent, and a real estate agent, there's a major difference between a residential real estate agent and a commercial real estate agent. And the residential real estate agent is dealing with emotions. That's what drives everything they do. And that's what drives residential sales. What drives all the residential stuff is emotion. In commercial, it's numbers. All right. And for me, numbers are the gospel. It's
Amen.
like accounting. It's, if it doesn't equal zero, it's not right. And if the NOI is X and the cap rate for that area is X, then the value is X, or Y, whatever. But with residential, it's, people like the exterior color to be painted white right now. And the trend, for 2022 was whatever. It's all emotion driven, which is so outside of your control. It's much more speculative, and it's much more risky, in my opinion.
Love it. Michael, you let us know in the chat if that answered your question pretty well. I mean, she alluded to it perfectly. It's either an emotional equation or a math equation. Which one would you rather deal with? And that's not to say that you can't make a ton of money in residential real estate dealing with people's emotions, but I'm wired very much like you, Jen. I am a math brain. I love numbers. A lot of people, one of the very first conversations I ever had in self-storage, we were talking to a guy who was like, his daughter was at Princeton to study accounting. It was like, self-storage is so boring, Dad. And it's like, no, not when you start seeing the NOI, right? When you see the net operating income of one of these facilities, your boredom goes out the window if you're motivated by math.
Boring assets, right? You don't want to deal with the crazy person who, whatever situation. I mean, some people do, right? Like, that's why we have so many people that are successful in residential real estate, because that they love helping people with their emotional issues that are involved in real estate. But commercial is just so much more logical, I would say, because it's math. It's just easier to manipulate and understand and adjust and run scenarios on.
So talk about that, and this is a really good way to go back to your self-storage facility that you guys have. What would you say the advantage? You guys are in legacy family, right? Tim Bratz, for those that don't know, big in the multifamily space. There's other people in that mastermind that are in other aspects of commercial real estate, whether it be office or mobile home parks, or there's a few others in there. What have you felt was the big advantage of being in self-storage?
Well, I think it goes back to the same thing Jennifer was saying. It's the incentive of having good management, because I think as an entrepreneur, you don't like to be under the umbrella of a boss because you have a ceiling. So there's no incentive to create or be more efficient. But like you said, with the difference between commercial and residential, we have the incentive to manage good, keep our costs low, keep our expenses low, keep a good eye on raising rates, and then being able to control the value of our property by our own direction and our own, efficiencies is what is very attractive to, especially to me, because it is boring, and I do like to build houses and I like the creative side of all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how awesome you make a house look. It's only going to be judged financially by the neighbor or whoever down the street that last sold their house. But when you're rewarded for your effort, like you are in commercial real estate, the more and better efficient effort that you put in, the more that your property is valued. That can be addictive in itself, because then you're just forcing, every time you force yourself to be more efficient, you see it, the line on the graph go up and up and up and up. And that's like a drop of dopamine, or whatever, like checking off something off a list. Like, you just want to just keep doing better and better. And then you pushing yourself to find better opportunity, because now you've learn from the people. Like for the masterminds, for example, you're learning how other people are operating and keeping those costs low and doing things in an efficient manner. And that's super important as well.
And when you're dealing in an asset class like self-storage, I think the number came out a couple of weeks ago in 2022, the average Class A facility traded at a 4.6 cap, which, you know, for anyone who doesn't know, you simply divide the net operating income by 0.046 and you're going to come out with the value of the property, right? And so when you're dealing with a 0.046 cap, you're talking about like 22 years of net operating income that you're going to get paid for that thing, or it's going to be valued at. A small change becomes a massive increase to the value of your property. And so you go to a mastermind and you hear one little tiny thing that all of a sudden makes a $20,000 or $30,000 difference in your property in a year. And you just really elevated the value of your property.
Right. Plus it's the economy of scale. You know, you have so much in one spot where, like in residential rental houses, like if you had 500 units, you'd have to drive all over the county or all over the city to deal with all this stuff. But the economy of scale of having one building and 500 units coming in at one time to one mailbox, I mean, in itself is efficient. And then with big numbers, like you said, small changes affect a big number a lot different than, you know, small numbers obviously do. So a decimal point moves, that's a massive change on the scale, you know. So
yeah, I wanted to add that to anyone that's watching that's maybe doesn't know what a cap rate is or NOI, that when we first got started, I didn't know what a cap rate was. Like we got approved for that loan and I never talked about a cap rate with anybody. I remember calling a competitor who me at the time being new was thinking, you know, we all just shared trade secrets or whatever. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking about adding solar panels to the roof. I knew that you had added it. I didn't know if you thought it was a good deal or whatever. I wanted to get your thoughts. And he was explaining the value of it based on the cap rate and how, you know, it saved X amount in the utility bill, therefore, and it only cost this amount. And so it made the facility worth more. And I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. And so not saying that we're not sophisticated, but it's not an ultra sophisticated type of investment. You know, it's once you learn what are the formulas or what are the main things that you use and how to manipulate those, it's very easy to get into self-storage. And I don't know what the statistic is, but I think it's greater than 70% of self-storage and owners are mom and pop.
Yeah, it was interesting. Life Storage and Extra Space just announced the merger the other day. They are now going to surpass Public Storage as the largest entity in self-storage, and yet they still only own 13% of the facilities. Public owns another 10%. CubeSmart and NRA REIT between them own a few, but 70% mom and pop facilities and just massive opportunity there, which is fantastic. So following up on that idea of cap rate, you said take me into the expansion. You said you've got 500 doors in your facility now. You're looking at doing a 300 door expansion on it?
No, so this one is a little over 500 with the expansion.
Got it. Okay. And so take me through where it is now and what you're adding to it, because maybe I missed the numbers there.
Yeah. So this facility we opened in 2000. What was it, Jeremy? 2019. Yeah. So it was an old cow pasture is what it was. And it became a storage facility. And, you know, we did the strategy with the seller financing, the refi, SBA loan. It was infinite returns, you know, off the bat with the way that we did the first refi with no money down. And so then refied it again and added around 300 units, a 2-story climate control building, and then prepped for phase 3. So we've got a big parking lot with 71 parking spaces that it will 5-10 years down the road end up being phase 3 to that project. But also we lived in that house. So that house we fixed up, we refied that. My mom lives there now. My stepmom works there. I know a lot of people are like, don't work with your family, but my mom, benefits from our business. My stepmom benefits from our business. I just hired my goddaughter to work with me as an assistant. Like, I want to bring in my family, figure out what they're good at. And if they want to work with me, I want them to, I want everyone to benefit from what we're doing, because they all have unique skills and we can all help each other out. And then we've got another project now that we just finished getting zoned, where we're at an 80,000 square foot on the other side of the county.
Got it. So you've kind of decided that this is going to be a path that you keep going down in the self-storage space.
Yeah, and it's not all we do. I mean, we spend a lot more of our time on building spec homes, building high-end luxury homes. That's what Jeremy loves doing. He is great at it. We're known for our brand. Our name is known in this community for beautiful, gorgeous homes, and we love land development. There's a lot of different things that we can and will do, and storage makes up a good part of our portfolio, but that's not it.
I love that idea that you said something that resonated so much. Jeremy loves to do it, right? And how important is that in guiding where your ship is going for both of you? Not just for Jeremy loving building the spec homes, but obviously Jennifer, you also have that mathematical side of it where that lights the fire. How important is it to you two as a couple to be making sure that you're doing things that excite you?
Yeah, I don't believe in the idea of retirement. I want to do what I love doing until I die. And I want to pass that legacy on to my children, to find what you love doing and do it every day. And if you stop loving doing it, find something else, like be a lifetime student, always learning something new and figuring out what you love and doing it and giving back to the world.
And we kind of use our passions. With my passion for spec homes and stuff is also a way to produce cash to invest into self-storage. So, I mean, you got to have cash. In our opinion, we kind of follow what a guy that we know, Chris Root, says of having slow money, medium money, and fast money. So we always have to have it churning. It'd be nice to only do self-storage, but then eventually you're going to run out of down payments. And then unless you're really comfortable with, raising capital with a lot of people and things like that. I think Jennifer and I, our model is a little slower, and then where we would rather just own our asset ourselves, especially our first few, before we start getting involved with a whole lot of bigger deals with a lot more people. And I think the residential side of, flipping houses and selling spec homes and getting that medium fast money in helps to fulfill that vision that we have, and then allows us to do more development type deals.
Gives you the down payment money to be able to develop that long-term slow money.
Correct. And it allows us to keep a lot of subcontractors busy over time, because I would love to be only building self-storage every day, but the fact of the matter is, there's a lot more opportunity to keep everybody busy in the residential world than there are to find these diamonds in the rough, so to speak, in self-storage. So.
We can speak to that for sure. It's been a slow 6 or 7 months in trying to find projects to do for legacy developers. Quite frankly, through 2022, it's really hard to find projects that penciled. We were still seeing ridiculous land costs. The price of land had not come down commensurately with the increase in costs of bank financing and construction costs. So I want to dig on to something you said, which kind of stoked the fire. Keeping people working. How gratifying is that for you, that, man, you're paying some bills for some people?
Yeah, we always talk about that, or think about that, Jennifer and I do, when we're kind of thinking, man, we need to do more for people. We don't feel like we're being charitable enough and things like that. And then we go through our P&L and we say, we're doing pretty good for a lot of people, because, we are putting millions of dollars back into the community, through doing these projects and keeping the ball rolling. And it's all about momentum. We want to keep everybody busy. We want to keep cash flowing, things happening, people moving, because it's hard to get that ball back moving when you lose a little bit of momentum in your deal flow. So that's where I've said it has worked out really well with my passion being in residential, although I would love to go all commercial, but right now it's kind of fed, it's kept that momentum going with the construction crews. And fortunately, we own our own construction business too, which makes it easier to do all these things. but to keep everybody moving and keep the grease, the wheel greased and everything. And so anytime we can do a project, we can just jump on it and mobilize immediately is super important.
So want to get into some like real tactical stuff with you guys. Steve touched base earlier about this idea of the couple, right? And you guys are a power couple and you complement each other. Give me a couple. It's funny for us in the Storage Syndicate. We right now have 2 JV partners that we already are doing self-storage deals with and 3 others that are under contract to buy projects with us. All 5 of those couples are husband and wife teams where they're both intimately involved in the project. So it's so interesting having you guys come on because it's something we're seeing more and more. I'm not that way with my wife. My wife has a completely different career. Joe and Brian are founders at Legacy. Same thing. Their wives are not intimately involved. But all of a sudden, we have this whole group of people that it's husband and wife are on every call together. Give me, 1, 2, 3, 4 tips that you would have that make it work for you guys, things that you would share with other people that are in this situation where the husband and wife are wanting to work together. What are some tactical things they can do to make that a successful partnership in business?
Yeah, I would say I try to practice being respectful because, we're not just business partners, we're a couple. And so like if Jeremy has an idea and I think it's retarded, I'm not going to say that. Or, I have, sorry, Jeremy, but like I've learned, be respectful and to know his love language personally and professionally. So, Jeremy wants to be congratulated and point out the good things that he's done. Like that's why he creates a beautiful home because it's something to be admired. And so if I'm like, cool, job's done, on to the next thing. There's the numbers, whatever, keep the truck moving. That's not gonna be great for business or us personally either, because I need to acknowledge, him and, just know how to communicate with that person personally and professionally so that their cup is being filled.
Love that.
That's a great answer. Man, wow. Yeah, that's we had
like just keeping what Jennifer spoke about earlier, just keeping allowing people to own their own tasks and what they're good at. I think in any relationship, whether it be our relationship with business or from a management perspective, just letting that person own that task. I know that she's going to handle underwriting, so I'm not going to come in there and say, well, did you do this? Did you think about this? Did you do that? When she's perfectly capable of doing that. In the same way, she's not going to come to me and say, you should design this, whatever, this way or that way, or you should run your crews this way or that way. We try not to blend those things and get too involved in each other's part of the business. And that really has been I think the biggest part of our success tidbit or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
You distinctly understand your individual roles and responsibilities and stick to them and don't get too caught up and sticking your spoon in the other person's soup, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we could both be thinking about the same task in 2 different ways, and both ways could perfectly work. But why go back and forth when you just need to assign whoever's responsible for that task, let them own it, and then we either learn from it or grow, or either it's a success or we learn from it. But either way, we just own our own responsibilities. It just
Sorry, Jeremy, I cut you off. I'm good at doing that. I tend to talk a little too much, but we're coming up on 2 minutes left, and there's one thing that I really wanted to hit on before we leave you guys. You're both the same way. I follow you both religiously on Facebook. Nonstop positivity. Like it is just and not always like rainbows and butterflies positivity. Sometimes like tell it like it is positivity, like what you need to hear, but never victim mentality, never crying in your soup, never like always stuff that's uplifting and giving people some positive direction. How did that come about? Why is that so important to you guys? And I guess I would say, because you guys are super consistent in your presence on social media, what has that meant to you and what led to that?
Yeah, it's just a good habit. It was actually like a social media schedule that started that. And then it was the one thing I wanted to keep because I realized it was like a simple thing that could lead to an infinite positive return. So I share something positive, somebody else shares it, or maybe it changes their mood for the day, which changes the way they treat their children or whatever. And so I started doing it. Jeremy does it. I have so many close friends who do it. I mean, it's not that my life is perfect or our life is perfect. We have bad days like everyone else. Sometimes I wake up on the wrong side of the bed, but I'm still going to share something positive.
Yeah. I love that, guys. I cannot thank you enough. As I thought, we talked a little bit before we went live that this is going to be one of those things where we get to the 45-minute mark and I could easily go another 45 minutes. Really want to respect your time and thank you so much. Couple of housekeeping issues. Next Wednesday, actually, Steve and I are going to be out in Las Vegas for the ISS, one of the two big trade shows for self-storage. We are going to be actually doing our interview live from the show floor. Jennifer and Jeremy, you guys know JC Morales from Legacy Family. We're actually going to be interviewing him next week while we're out in Vegas live. This should be a fun one. Carmen Rousseau chiming in with a thank you, guys. Really, really thank you so much for coming on and joining us. So many things that you guys said that are actionable pieces. The one thing I really loved, $10,000, go out and get a piece of property, $1 million loan a year later. Really, really cool to hear those stories of like, this is what's really possible. So for those of you guys that are listening that maybe think it's not for me or I can't do it, what a phenomenal story, Jennifer and Jeremy. Really appreciate you guys and keep doing what you're doing and look forward to seeing you guys again soon in person.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Alrighty.
Have a great one.
Thanks, you too.